get to introduce one of my most favorite people at Best Buy. So now we're going to go into the panel discussion on leveraging your North Star to drive your career. And I am here to introduce the amazing moderator that we have. Her name is Chloe Mallard, and she is an events specialist on our corporate COPA, what is that? Communications team, right? Communications team here at Best Buy. But she is also known as Chloe with the Fro. Chloe is an entertainer at heart. She's a singer. She used to work on a cruise ship. Like when she gets in front of a crowd, you're like, that's your joint, girl. Get on up there and do your thing, because she is very, very good at it. She has a talk show on YouTube called Hey Chloe. You can find her on LinkedIn and Instagram at Chloe with a Fro. And she's just a great individual. So I'm so excited to invite her to the stage to moderate our panel. I'm turning it over to Chloe Mallard. Thanks, Chloe.
Thank you, Carla. I've never had such a great introduction. Hi, everyone. How you doing today? I do this little thing where I say, hey, Chloe. Hey, y'all. It's so nice. It's so nice to have you all here today. Again, I go by Chloe with the Fro. I'm really excited to moderate this panel. We have amazing speakers, and we're going to be talking about leveraging your North Star to drive your career. So I want to say this is a room full of professionals and great thinkers. So as we're having this conversation, I would love for you all to come up with some questions that you can ask the panelists at the end. This is for your benefit. This is a development day. So if you want to know something, think about it. We are going to ask questions at the end. I want to give a good chunk of time. So Eric or someone, give me the little usher finger when we need to cut it and get to the questions. So I would like to invite our panelists up here. We have Abo, Craig, and Janelle. Come on up to the stage. Yes, there we go. Just looking good.
Good morning. Oh, that sounds good.
Right? All right. I don't think I need this. So, do you mind? Thank you. There we go. All right. So before we start, we would love for you all to just introduce yourselves, give your title, and I think it would be interesting to also know how long you've been in your career, in your professional career, just to give an idea. I think we have a good range of how long we've all been in our professional development. So go ahead, and Craig, you can start off.
Good morning, everyone. Craig Warren, he, him, his. I'm the CEO of Washburn Center for Children. I guess my professional career is like 30 years.
Good morning. Good morning. Janelle Foster, use pronouns she and her. Curly black hair today, green blouse, and I'm wearing glasses. I'm a workforce engagement leader at Wells Fargo. I've been in the business for nearly 30 years. I started in the front line, and I will consider myself as a human resources practitioner, DEI practitioner. I've spent some time in a payment space, treasury management, merchant services. Currently, I sit in the Wealth and Investment Technology Division, and I drive employee engagement strategies for the organization.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ebo Nana Kwesen. I've been also an HR practitioner for the last 11 and a half, 12 years. Here at Best Buy, I work under Neo's team. I support the IDI work here at Best Buy, so the Intercultural Development Inventory. I see some heads nodding. I'd love to connect with some of y'all later today. Let's definitely network. But it's great stuff here at Best Buy. I'm super excited to be up here in front of y'all today. So again, just can't wait for what we got.
Yeah. All right. So I wanted to start off with the basic question, because we kind of just throw this word out here, your North Star and how to leverage it to drive your career. So anyone can answer this first one. It's kind of just open, but how did you identify your North Star and how has it aided in your career success?
Well, I could start. When I think about my North Star, I would tell you, quite honestly, I don't think I had the North Star. So I'm someone that found Wells Fargo as a teenager and looking for a job. That job was starting on the front line as a bank teller. thankfully was able to transition into a human resources function. So starting on the front line, even in HR, I think for most folks, when you talk to HR practitioners, they will tell you they didn't pursue HR. HR kind of found them. I'm one of those folks. And so I spent about 20 years in HR doing a variety of different roles, recruiting, talent acquisition, leader, project management, HR business partner, really developing kind of a knack, if you will, for executing wide range transformative initiatives at Wells Fargo. And so really being blessed to know that I've developed these skill sets, acquiring different transferable skills, but also just recognizing that there was so much more that I was able to accomplish, other talents that I could leverage, other interests that I had. And as I started to think about possibilities for me, being close to the customer, being close to the P&L, not staying in a staff role was something that I was very clear about. And so making those pivots, when I think about the career progression, it was never linear. I think if you look at any leader in your organization, you will see that they do not have a linear career path, that career growth, that they probably tried their hand at a few different things. And so that's been really the playbook that I've been following, and just being very clear about the things that I want to do. What does that look like? And what are my non-negotiables that I don't want to compromise? And so, getting some clarity. I think I've been on this journey. I'm still on a journey. I mentioned 30 years at Wells Fargo. I will tell you that there's professional jealousy when I think about peers that I see that get to bounce from brand to brand. The wonderful thing about my organization is that I do get to bounce internally from function to function, division to division, and it feels like a new organization. So still gaining clarity and thinking about kind of what's next. I have a long runway, so.
Craig, can I let you just kick us off, or not kick us off, but close us out? I'll follow you, Janelle. I feel like I'm going to copy all your answers today. Much like you just mentioned, I sort of fell into HR, talent acquisition as well. When I got started in my career, I started with a company called Robert Half, if some of y'all are familiar. So in the recruiting space is what I started in. And from there, I think I just had conversations with God, right? For me, that's how I internally found my, North Star, following my passion, having conversations with God, like I mentioned, meditating on it, praying on it, was really my approach to figuring out what my passion was and where I could take my career from there.
I have a very eclectic professional background over the 30 years I've been working. So I started my career in the military. I spent time in management consulting. I spent time in corporate America with Coca-Cola, with Rockwell Automation, and with Best Buy. I spent time with a variety of nonprofit organizations, with the United Way, with the Minnesota Children's Museum, and now Washburn. So for me, that North Star has evolved over time. When I started out, it was, what do I feel called to do? And that was leadership, which led me to a sense of my calling is in service, and that service might be through military service initially. And that evolved into what are the needs of family around what are economic things as I'm transitioning out of the military, and that wasn't going to be a career. I need to get a job. I got married. I had a child. Kind of economics kind of played a factor into what can I get paid for. And then I fell into something that I was good at, where I fell into a corporate period of time where I was doing shared services work and developed an expertise around that I had passion about, that I was good at and was successful at. But also during that time, that piece around what is your purpose and what is your calling is I never intended to be in the private sector. So as I went into the private sector, there always this sense of I had my younger self wanted to do something in service, and it wasn't military service, and I got pulled into these other things, but there was still this thing of I don't think this business thing is your purpose and calling. And that was a growing sense in the more time I spent in corporate America, and prayed on that as well, and had this sense of there's something else for me. And I think it may not be military service, but that service piece of my identity and purpose was still there, calling me back to the social sector. So that discernment brought me back into the social sector after 14 years in the corporate world to go back to the nonprofit sector in United Way. And I was fortunate while at United Way to be blessed with the opportunity to have a different view of my calling and what my true north was, because I was able to attend the Shannon Leadership Institute, which is a program that allows you to revitalize. It's for community leaders to help them revitalize, but you revitalize by spending about 9 months clarifying what are your core values, and then what do those core values require of you if you're going to live into them. And that was a very different view in terms of my true north that I'd had before, that really brought greater clarity to for the last probably 10 years or so of my career around what are my values and how am I manifesting those values in my life. And work is a component of my life, but it's not the only component. And that's really guided me going forward with that, of really being more values driven in terms of what is my value, what is my purpose, how do I live into my values, and then how does that manifest professionally?
Chloe, y'all see why I let Dronell lead and
Okay, look
Craig
at him.
close? Well done.
Also, I think, can we switch him to a wireless mic, please? We're getting a little feedback. But I love that you said that, because I actually had another question down, and it was talking about, like, what if your North Star changes, right? Because sometimes you might be in a career for a while and you think, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. I myself have experienced that, where you thought you was going to do one thing and maybe it completely changed, whether something happened within your personal life, whether it was a restructure and you lost your job, whether you got passed over yet again for another promotion. But in your case, you just decided you knew that you wanted to do something else. So maybe if you can get some advice to some people that, like, maybe they're in that position where they thought it was one thing, but now it's something totally different, and they're scared. They're having to start all over.
I guess there's that movie Inside Out too, I think is out. That's about the Pixar movie about emotions, and the sequel to that. And I remember something from the first movie of a kid seeing that and talking about, I'm not going to let fear be in the driver's seat. And I think about a big thing, I think, is not letting fear be in the driver's seat. Just because you're afraid of something doesn't mean you shouldn't do it or explore it. It just means understanding, what are the roots of that fear? What do I stand to gain? What is the joy that could come out of managing through that fear, and being very intentional about that? And I think not being afraid of failure. Sometimes stuff doesn't work out. I mean, you talked about some of those points in my career were things that were of my choosing. And some of the things were of other events happened around in life or professionally that precipitated me to consider things differently. So I think a big thing is not, I mean, you're always going to be afraid. I'm afraid every day. I mean, in the role I'm in as the CEO, I'm responsible for an entire organization. There are kids in our community that need mental health services. There are the employees that, their livelihoods depend on our ability to be sustainable. There's a lot of fear around failure around that, but that doesn't cripple me. I wake up with that. I'm aware of that. I talk about that. I get support in how to manage that, and I move through that.
I would add to that, just thinking about, folks that may be in a corporate setting and just not knowing what else is possible. I've been blessed greatly, but being able to leverage the rails, if you will, of Wells Fargo, getting more involved in community, for example. I think about volunteerism, board service, all these different avenues. You never know what's possible until you try your hand at things. One thing I think about is, careers evolve as functions evolve. Where are the new spaces? Where are the firefighting? Where is that happening? Where is the action happening at your organization, and being curious around that? And I think that's been something too that's always had me thinking about what else, what's next. But having that fortitude, that insights around that intellectual curiosity around what's happening in the business, what's happening in the industry, what direction are we going, and taking a step on faith in trying something new and different that you may not be great at, but that there's an opportunity for you to go and learn something new and different. And so I think about that as you are thinking about your North Star, and kind of maybe there's a new purpose that has emerged for you. How do you follow that? And where are the opportunities for you to kind of go and dip your toe in and maybe develop a little bit more muscle, if you will, in this new space? But again, to your point around fear, we cannot let fear consume us. But again, having that courage to step out on faith and try something new and different, and always, always, always be reinventing ourselves. And I always think about the toolbox. I'm always thinking about, how am I filling my toolbox? What's something new, different? What can I learn from? If it's a failure, how do I learn from that failure, but apply it to what I do next? And again, remembering these experiences, but again, having more at-bat opportunities, but again, not being consumed with fear is what I would add.
I concur Yeah, well said. I think for me, the biggest thing is understanding that we've all been through things before and just lean on the fact that you can be resilient again. That's where, again, faith might step in for some of us. As Janelle mentioned, tough times will come and, just understanding that you can be resilient through things. I also try to, as I'm sure the both of y'all do, all of us might try to lean into what's uncomfortable. I think that stretching yourself, might help you grow. So always try to keep that in mind as well.
I think just to add something to that is listening. And it's not superficial listening. It's listening to those things that are sort of in the background that don't go away, and really listening and be aware of the fact there's something in the background that's not going away and it keeps coming up, and I'm not quite sure what to do with that. And that voice keeps coming up, or it keeps showing up in life, and kind of just being open to the possibilities of how things are being presented to you. And it may not be what you thought you were looking for, but being mindful of this keeps coming back up. A person keeps coming back up, or a vibe keeps coming back up, or a space keeps coming back up. And if it keeps coming back up and it's not something you intentionally are putting in front of you, being mindful of what's being said. What is the opportunity that may be putting in front of you that you may be missing because you're not really paying attention and listening to what's being conveyed to you?
Absolutely. And I want to kind of go back because Janelle, you were saying some great things, and I knew this question would be good for you because you never know where your North Star may take you. And sometimes it may take you to a whole different place that you never thought you would be. I guess question for the audience, how many people are from Minnesota? Wow. For people online, there was like 6 people maybe that raised their hands.
Transplants.
So I love
We're
it.
winning.
Okay, maybe I didn't have to ask this one because I was going to be like, when you have to relocate to a whole different place and start all over again. So everyone else is from somewhere else, yes? How many people have been here for more than 10 years though? Okay. Why y'all lying? Y'all Minnesotans now. I'm kidding. But I'm sure that was something, but I won't say that everybody online maybe hasn't done this yet, but maybe you can give some insight when your North Star takes you somewhere in a whole different direction. Relocating is a big deal. This is the 5th state I've lived in actually. So I have hopped around quite a bit, and it's always a challenge finding yourself in somewhere new, because it's kind of like you kind of got to prove yourself or put your foot in the door. And especially if you're not coming over to take a higher position, but like, what was your experience like?
So again, I've had the benefit of having an amazing organization that I've been able to work with, but also having that organization take me across the country. And so I was not looking to leave my home base around my family. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, and did a couple of tours of duties with Wells Fargo. This has been the longest tour of duty. But I knew nothing about Minnesota. I'm like, why would I want to go to Minnesota? My leader came to Minnesota and made that phone call to me and said, I need you. Can you come? And there's something else to be said in this as well, as you think about those people that are put in your life, those connections that you have, those mentors, those sponsors, those advocates. But she brought me here, and it was supposed to be a 2-year commitment. I knew I was going to be incredibly uncomfortable, but all I saw was opportunity all around me. And so this is where I talk about taking those calculated risks, taking a step out on faith, trying something new and different. Yes, change is difficult. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but the growth that comes on the other side of it, incredibly, incredibly valuable. Now, granted, I wasn't supposed to stay as long as I have, but I'm still here. But to the point around the opportunities, there's a small window of opportunity. And when that window of opportunity comes, you have to go. I think it's also important that we don't wait for the tap on the shoulder, that we go and create the tap and create opportunities. When you see things that are happening within your business, going and get curious about those things that are happening over there, finding out how you can be a valuable asset to that division, telling them about a problem they don't even know that they have. But again, showing that unique value, that perspective that you bring to really help them in the work that they're doing. But I live my life without regrets. The relocation opportunities have been amazing. The hockey stick experience that I've had here in Minnesota has been profound. And again, I think just for anyone that's thinking about, and many of you have relocated, so you know this, I think it's also about that community. How do we find community? How do we find ways that we continue to thrive? We take care of ourselves, but more importantly, that we lean on each other and that we are welcoming of others, but also understanding that we all need somebody at some point in time inside the walls of our organization and outside of the walls of our organization, and communities like this is super, super valuable and very powerful.
Can I add? Can I add? I also think that from an economic perspective, relocating with an organization is fantastic. Because if you've moved on your own and the expenses with that, and moving with some sort of corporate relocation package and doing that multiple times, and particularly moving from higher expense areas to lower expense areas, I mean, so I would just add there's an economic component of that, particularly because we're talking about Black folk and wealth is an issue for our community, that those corporate relocations can increase your base salary. But if you're getting into home ownership and some of the corporate relocation benefits around that, and you're doing that a couple of times, that can add up over the course of a career in a very meaningful way in terms of wealth. I would also say that if you don't want to stay in the same organization, like you've been fortunate to stay in the same organization, we're a value commodity. I know there's some BS going on in the broader society around ED&I and all that stuff, but the country is becoming more browner, Black and brown, and so is the workforce. So the skills and experiences and knowledge that we bring are in demand and are needed for the society. So if you're willing to move, the realm of professional opportunities you're willing to have, if you're willing to relocate somewhere where they don't have someone with your identities and with your experience, they'll be willing to pay for that. You'll get to go somewhere and you'll get to deal with that. So I'd also encourage you can do that within an organization if you're fortunate to have those opportunities. But if you're willing to move outside of your organization, that can be very beneficial for you. And sometimes you get sent places. Like I always think about, the Army sent me, my first station in the Army was South Korea. I had no desire to go to South Korea. And the first place they sent me to was South Korea, and I spent 18 months in South Korea. And that's not where I wouldn't have gone there for tour. I would not have gone there. And I feel so grateful for earlier in my career to have that organization send me somewhere that I had no desire to go or interest in going, and how much I took away from that experience of being in an environment that was not an environment I would have chosen to go to, with people and a culture that I knew absolutely nothing about, to learn about that. So sometimes there's those things of taking risk and putting yourself in uncomfortable places. Sometimes you can choose that, and sometimes it's chosen for you, but that can be a really beneficial, rich experience.
And I'll just quickly add as well, as a talent acquisition professional, former recruiter, to Craig's point, always negotiate, right? If you are up for a promotion, if you're an external candidate trying to get into a new company, if you're looking to relocate and the opportunity does not offer you that, well, ask, right? The worst that they could say is no. So that's a really good point, but definitely try to push to have those conversations.
While we got you talking, Ava, I want to know, what are some internal driving forces for you to find your North Star?
Yeah, again, my internal driving force, the biggest one is God, my faith. That's the biggest internal driving force. So my suggestion, my recommendation is to always have conversations with God, meditate, prayer. Really, that's my internal driving force.
I can attest to that. Maybe I need Jesus. Oh my goodness. Well, I wanted to kind of shift over to another question that I had, and it's an interesting topic because I don't want to say anything out of terms, but I have personal opinions about it, and we're kind of talking about like elevating in your position, and are we focusing more now on hard skills that are valuable versus, degrees? And I've come from, I know y'all are gonna be like, you're young, but I come from the generation where still that was all they talked about. You going to school. Granted, it was no money saved to send anybody to school, but that was like honed into us that we needed these degrees. But I think I don't know how everyone else feels, but I think there's a little shift happening where you don't necessarily need, the highest of degrees to advance in your careers. There are people in very high positions, executives even, that don't necessarily have a doctorate or a master's, but we've heard that whole thing about how what is it? A master's is the new bachelor's and a bachelor's is the new associate. So what are your thoughts about that, especially using degrees or hard skills to leverage your career?
Again, as a former recruiter, when I was with Cargill in 2017, I think that was the first time I remember the conversation about taking education requirements out of job descriptions. Now, fast forward to where we are today in 2024, you hear the tagline, skills is a new currency, right? So always understand and remember that, not trying to, diminish higher education and advanced degrees by any means, but just understand that in this shifting world, this shifting landscape, again, skills is a new currency. So.
I will just add, I was one of those non-traditional students. So anyone that knows my background know that I've been around the block, and it took me a while to get to where I wanted to be. But at the same time, like as I think about, higher ed, as I think about certifications, I'm in this space now where I sit in technology, and there's so much that's happening in the tech space, and the fact that I get to sit in this business. The learning that's happening, coming into technology as a non-technologist, but the learning, the opportunities, the boot camps that are out there that are free oftentimes, that there are, certain certifications that I'm thinking about pursuing that isn't going to cost me a ton of money, but also recognizing that the company still offers tuition reimbursement. So that's a big piece of it. But I do a lot of professional development on my own dollar, on my own dime. And so when I think about where I want to spend my time, my energy, I'm going to corporate conferences. I have a plan, and that plan talks about corporate boards and getting to a corporate board, as I transition to my next phase of life. And that's where I'm spending time and energy, where I'm going and being in rooms, positioning myself in rooms and places where it's going to help me continue to grow. And as I think about, what that next part of life is going to look like, how I'm going to continue to add value in different spaces, that's where I'm spending my time and energy. I'm not focused about getting the advanced degree, and it's kind of the next degree. I'm at a point in life where I don't want to go into more debt. And so that's not attractive to me. For anyone that knows me, that I'm a world traveler. I love to get out and have different experiences and have other things that really fuel me, that, fill my cup. And so I'm all about self-care and all those things. So I spend money differently these days. But I think it's about kind of where you are in your life, what's important, and also kind of where are you trying to go, and what does that North Star looks like, and what's on that action plan. We should always be having a plan of action and working on that, developing the plan, but then also working on tackling that plan and always continuing to add more to that. So that's just my perspective and how I look at it. But I love school. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of different ways where we get free school.
Right.
Let's tap into some things. Someone talked about LinkedIn earlier, different communities. There's so much that's out there. Don't spend your dime if you don't have to.
I would just maybe a slightly different view. There are certain disciplines where the degree gives you knowledge. There are certain technical disciplines where you need to go to school, because if you're going to be designing bridges or designing things, like there's a certain degree that you're.
Please go to school.
No, but I'm just you don't necessarily want the person who, like, I did a do-it-yourself course to design your bridge or your road. And there's other things where it's like, no, it's not. You could pick up the knowledge and it's not as critical to that. And I think that's important as you're thinking about making those investments in an undergraduate degree or a technical degree or graduate degrees, because absent those areas where that educational environment is really conveying knowledge that is necessary for you to have a base level of knowledge in the discipline you're going in, which I would argue is not most of the degrees that colleges are providing, then you need to do that. Outside of that, it's branding. And you're thinking about any education you're getting or certification is more about a marketing and personal branding exercise than it is about the knowledge needed to actually do the job. Because most jobs, other than those technical things, those are real out there, where you need a base level of knowledge to do that, and that certification really does have meaning and value for the safety and quality of the work that's done. That's not the majority of jobs. It's a branding thing, and you need to think about what is your brand and how does this enhance or take away from your brand. And there's Black folk in the room. If you're Black and you're going to be in certain spaces that are those technical areas, you're going to need that technical degree, and they're not going to consider you unless you don't have that. And there are other spaces where you do not need that to have the work, but they are not going to let you in the room. Or if you're in the room, they're going to be skeptical of you, or they're going to tear you down because you do not have that academic pedigree, which is not needed for you to get the job or to be successful in the job. But it would be disingenuous to say that that does not matter in terms of how you're perceived and your effectiveness and the opportunities that will be put forward to you. So I think that's important to think about when you're getting a degree. for where you think you're going or the spaces you might be in. Is there a brand to the degree you're getting that's going to matter in those spaces? Because if you have a degree or certification that is not respected in the spaces that you're in, you've wasted your money, because people are going to dismiss it and say, you're thinking, I busted my butt, I got this degree, I'm first generation, and the spaces you're in are saying, that degree at that school and that space does not have value for us because we do not respect that. So I encourage you to think about, and it evolves over time, as we've talked about the true north, but there is a very real thing, particularly for people who hold marginalized identities, where that may get you in the room, or that may get you consideration or some connection that can have a meaningful impact for you financially and in terms of your experience, that's not necessarily tied to your ability to do the job. And I just think it's important to think about those two paths. It's not that you need it to be effective. It's not that it's going to get you the job, because most jobs are through relationships, but it can grease the wheels, the path for some things down the road in a way that over time can accumulate in a significant fashion.
Yeah, but y'all write your stuff down. That was a good one. All right, so I want to also give time to the audience for some questions. I am going to ask one more, but I just want to let y'all know that it's coming up. So I hope you all have some questions ready. Again, this is Craig, that's Janelle, and that's Abo. If you want to give direct questions, or if you want to just give something for the panelists, but get to thinking. So one more question before we pass it over to the audience, but I would love for you all to maybe give some strategies that folks can use to check in with themselves about their career and where they want to go with it, you know, not just getting to that point where you're kind of just letting time fly by. All of a sudden you get into a role and it's 5 years later and you're still in the role. We don't want to do that. So what are some things, obviously a little, if you don't mind going a little bit different than that normal like 5-year, 10-year plan type of thing. Like what are some like real strategies and key things that people can use in their everyday life to make sure that they are staying on the right path, or actually going somewhere?
Yeah, I can kick us off. And for the questions, the Q&A, I can give the crowd, the audience, another mic, and then we can probably just share. You know, for me, I think about my inner circle, those that are close to me, you know, my parents, 2 Ghanaian parents that they keep me accountable. Just trust me on that. And then also friends, extended family, right? You have to think about, in my opinion, those that know you and understand you, and those that can keep you held accountable as well. I think that's something that certainly helps in terms of like a strategy to make sure that you don't stay comfortable, to make sure that you're always progressing. Yeah, just paying attention to those that are around you.
I'm a big proponent of a concept called your personal board of directors, which at whatever point in your career you're in, I encourage you to start building your personal board of directors, because that is kind of like the true north and a compass. Your personal board of directors stays with you throughout your life. And the people in that are the people who, when you're starting your career, hey, I think I want to go to school. I think I want to start my own business. I think I want to be a manager or director. And that's someone who you're vulnerable with, who you share that with. And that board of directors are the ones who, hey, didn't you talk about there was this thing you want to do? And you seem to be sort of be striking a neutral, or, yeah, that really happened. And that wasn't really, that's going to be a setback from that. But you still said you wanted to do this. So let's help you get on track and sort of doing that. So I think for me in my career, that personal board of directors that I've had some people on my board for over 20 years or so have really been that piece that sort of hold me accountable. They give me a shoulder to cry on. They give me a kick in the butt sometimes. They give me resources and counsel on that kind of, as I grow and evolve, they grow and evolve with me in creating whatever I want to create professionally.
I'm going to add a couple things, because I'm just thinking about, you know, what's important. And, you know, again, I think about this room, looking at this room, and, you know, I think about relationships, networking opportunities, staying in spaces where you can network intentionally with folks that have that drive, that energy. What are they doing? You know, what's the industry calling for right now? How am I constantly reinventing? I said that earlier. I think that's so important, that we are reinventing ourselves. If you're in a position where you are comfortable, get uncomfortable. Figure out how you redesign the job that you have, or you're looking for your next opportunity. By having an idea around where you want to go. If someone asks you the question, what do you want to do next? Have an answer.
Yeah.
You know, so again, spending that time thinking about professional development in a real way. You know, I'm one of the people, I can't tell you how many jobs I've had, but every 2 to 3 years I get an itch. And if the job isn't growing, if the space isn't growing, if another part of the business is the business that's getting invested in, I'm looking over there and thinking about, well, how do I kind of sidestep and actually go and pay attention there? How do I get associated with the work that they're doing there? And this is where that power of your network comes into play. And I think a lot of times let's grab coffee, let's do this, but how intentional are we with the people that we have connection with, that we're in relationships with, to have them help you in the place that you're trying to get to? But also hear me around cultivating your network. Don't go to your network only when it's time to make a withdrawal.
Yeah.
Know that deposits are important and we need to make deposits into those networks before we need to make that withdrawal. So that's something I'm a big proponent around career development. My brand, if you think about my brand, or if I share my brand with you, when I think about what people say about Drenell and the things that I do well, they're always talking about you build a lot, you create platforms, you bring people in. And I feel like I've been this entrepreneur or intrapreneur because I'm inside of Wells Fargo, utilizing Wells Fargo Rails, and I get to build programming. You know, one of the programs that I build is around career development, internal mobility, and having those conversations. There's so much talent that we have, and especially our folks that are on the front line. They don't have the opportunity to ascend, or they're not paired with the right folks, or they don't know what the navigation tools are. That GPS system, share the GPS system with other people and send the elevator back down and help people come up. And so that's something I've been really, really prideful about, and just creating opportunities for folks to grow within an organization. TC Band, this is something that we've all been passionate about, collectively bringing our ERGs together, because guess what? We all have dreams. We want to grow within organizations. We want to have successful, thriving careers. And there's other things that we have plans on doing. So how do we come together as community to create those spaces, create those opportunities, and to share with others, and not gatekeep, So
I love it. I'll be a little biased and be like, if you want to hear more about Janelle and her story, you could check out our episode of Hey Chloe. It's on YouTube, okay? She was great. All right, so now this is for you, your development. We're going to pass it over to the audience. We have 2 microphone runners, so who would like to be the brave one to go first? Yes, my friend. Just go ahead and press the button.
Is it on?
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Chloe. I will start with a question for Drenell. By the way, last night I traveled from Chicago for this event. I was there for ASH.
oh wow, thank you.
Thank you to Eric and Eric. Question for Drenell as a leader within Wells Fargo. In your position, how leaders drive you crazy with your passion, and how do you drive other leaders crazy?
I didn't know I'd drive them crazy. So I don't know. So one thing, because again, I mentioned starting on the front line at the organization, climbing up the ranks, right? I've been both a player and a coach. I've led large teams, small teams. I'm currently an individual contributor, but I influence all throughout the organization. I lead global teams through a matrix organization. But when I think about where I sit, I have a unique perspective, a unique skill. I sit between frontline employees, and I sit with executives, leaders of the organization. And I have the opportunity to bring perspectives, bring communities together to talk about what the challenges are from that standpoint, but also some of the challenges that leaders have. And so I don't know if I drive them crazy. I think they see me kind of as a unicorn in some spaces. The role that I have currently is a role that was developed. And I've built this new career, this new role in the last 2.5 years, and it's one that's having impact not just here within a division, but across the state of Minnesota and across Wells Fargo nationally, but also internationally. So I feel like I get to sit at an interesting intersection. And because I also am an HR practitioner, recovering HR practitioner, I bring that perspective into the work as well. But yeah, I hope that answers the question, or at least gives you a little bit more perspective. I think it's that other HR piece and just personality, who I am and how I connect in a deep, deep way with individuals, with groups. And so it's been definitely a value add.
Yes, be a unicorn. Drive these people crazy. They need something different. Also, don't mind when you get the mic, you can introduce yourself and say where you work if you feel like.
Hello, hi. We've met before, Janelle. I'm
Thanks for
Janelle.
coming.
Yes, thank you for the invite. I really appreciate being here with all of you. I am currently working in the PM space, trying to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, as I like to say. I did want to say that I do have kind of maybe a two-part question, but they're slightly unrelated, so I apologize for that. When you're when you're focusing on your branding, how do you still bring your full self when you're trying to curate like who you want to appear, who you want other people to know, like the things you want other people to know about? How do you kind of balance those two? And then also kind of what Janelle had mentioned before about kind of making those deposits. How do you make those meaningful deposits? Because I think for everyone, it's a little bit different. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, I know I'm not on the panel, but I just want to quickly say I think it's interesting because I've also feel like I sometimes have a little split. Like I have Chloe the Fro outside of this, and then I'm Chloe who works at the Best Buy events team. But I've recently realized y'all gonna get the same person, and I think that that's a little bit helpful because the person I am outside of work, the person that I try to be a shining light to everyone, I've realized that the more I just still be that same person, your whatever authentic self inside of work, the person you might think you shouldn't be, that's the one that people appreciate the most. And that has continually got me into spaces, and I've been introduced to different people that I never thought I would meet because I don't try to balance them as two different things, but just make them one. So.
And I'd love to hear from Janelle and Craig as well, as well. But thank you, Chloe. For the second part of your question, for me, making those deposits, I'm not sure where y'all two are going with this, but my take on it is just being authentic with your inner circle. When you have authentic conversations, making those deposits is kind of easy. So I just try to be authentic in those conversations.
I think the authenticity, I think like some of the perspectives we talked about how the true north evolves, I think the authenticity evolves. Authenticity as you advance, and for me, into more senior levels of an organization with more responsibilities for an organization, you're weighing what your professional responsibilities and accountabilities are within whatever that organization is with whatever your personal points of views and your personal styles is. And if you're fortunate, the organization you're in will be aligned with that. But if your particular talents take you into spaces where the organizations are not aligned with that, but that's what your gifts are, and you'd be denying your gifts by not professionally going into that space where that space may not be conducive to that, or you may have to hold all those things, which has been most of my career. There's an ongoing tension with that because being authentic may not allow you to be effective in your role, or there may be a tension with that you're going to have to hold at a very, not on a theoretical level, of a very real level. I'm an institution and this is what's right for the institution and the right decision. And there's going to be consequences that I personally am not okay with. They're not illegal or anything like that, but they're going to create angst within me. So I think that's just something, I don't know that that's an answer to that, but I think that's a great question, because I think that's something you need to be intentional and reflective around what's going on within me. If there's a source of something going on and it's like, oh, there's a tension between what's required of me to be effective and kind of what my personal preferences are, and making sure that it's not violating personal principles as opposed to personal preferences, because then it probably isn't really the right role, I think is an ongoing thing. And I think that's an ongoing discernment process. And relative to putting deposits in the bank, I'm a pretty strong introvert, so I understand strategically and benefited from the value of networking. that is not something that has come naturally to me, and I've had to develop the capacity to do that. And for me, it's making deposits with people where it's real. Because there's a lot of things that say there's books around how you go into a space and meet 10 people or 5 people and go through mechanistic follow-ups and all that stuff. And that to me just is more draining. It's like, where do you are in spaces where you're going to meet people who are different, or people who may be able, where you may be able to add value to them, they may be able to add value to you. And where you find those connections, lean into those connections. Don't do quality. Don't do quantity, do quality. And it may be a smaller set, but that smaller set may be really influential for what you need. And it may not be broad, but it may be deep and powerful. And that's something as an introvert, that's what I'd offer to the introverts out there who that may not come as naturally to, is do the quantity over quality and lean into what feels like, I feel like there's a connection. I feel like I can go with this. And the ones where you're like, oh, this is going to take work. I'm not excited about this. There may be value, but I'm not willing to put in the emotional effort, then don't.
Just one more in terms of the deposit making. I think about opportunities that come my way all the time. I know that somebody else is looking for opportunity. They're looking to, be able to be on a stage to deliver a presentation to a certain audience, getting visibility in front of certain leaders. I could take a step back and, you know what, the best person for this job is Jane. She's a great person. She's your person that you want to bring forward and giving that opportunity. So raising somebody else's profile, I'm okay sitting in the back and letting someone else have that opportunity. So that would be an example. Another example is being curious about the work that someone is doing. Again, as you're making these connections, being intentional with relationship building, and then you putting somebody else on. And so that's an example of how you make those deposits, being able to speak on behalf of someone, or get their name in a room, or get them invited to an event where they then are going to have some more opportunities, that access and exposure. We know it's real. So again, don't close the door because you got in. How do you keep the door open for the next person? And so those are ways that you can make some deposits.
So I know that we are coming down to time. Eric, do we have time? Just one more? Okay. Oh, yes, you're right. One up here, and then we'll do the chat. And then we'll have just one person.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Sibai, and I am a career coach and career counselor. And I work in the community to coach individuals, in particularly first generation, second chance, and also people who have disabilities. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask is about skills being the new currency. And so I wanted to ask, what are some skills, especially hard skills, that are considered some new currency that people should keep in mind in the changing workforce that may have different needs and abilities?
Public speaking, presenting, right? Facilitation skills. That's a really good question. I think, here at Best Buy specifically, we have a lot of PowerPoint presentations. So, and I know that's very similar to other corporate Fortune 100 companies as well. So facilitation skills, if you're taking notes on that, would definitely keep that in mind.
I would just add financial, like your ability to understand the financial state of your department, of your business, of your organization is a very useful, transferable skill that a lot of people don't think about. They limit that to accountants, and they need to do that. But if you understand that, there's a whole variety of things that you're going to see before other people, and you're going to understand what's going on in a deeper way that's going to transfer across almost every other role and organization you're going to be in.
I don't know if you know Eric Black, but I think you should talk with him too. I think he'd have some great insight on that.
And I'll just add collaboration, partnership. You do not get anything done by yourself, get it done alone. You get it done with others. So having that strong ability, that natural ability to work across lines is definitely going to take you far. So having that skill set as well.
And from the chat? Is your mic on? One press.
Oh,
Is it green?
there. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I think you can. So outstanding job from the panel. We did have one question from the chat that I wanted to share. It's from Amelia. The question is to you, Craig. You mentioned having your personal board of directors. Generally, we tend to have people who tell us what we want to hear. Do you have board members who challenge, stretch you? If so, how do you take those criticisms as opportunities?
My personal board of directors would be worthless if they were just sucking up to me. So for me, the personal board of directors are the people who have my best intentions at heart and who care enough to give the tough messages around that. And I think that's actually critical for the personal board of directors, because I feel like as a Black man professionally, a lot of times I'm under attack. Like whether I am or not, I feel like I'm under attack a lot of the time. So it takes a lot of emotional efforts to receive and act on constructive feedback that's thrown at you, because it's always thrown at you, and to suss through what's real, what's not real, and put aside the emotions of who's delivering it and how it's delivered. And that's actually part of the value of, I think, of the board of directors for me, is that when someone on there tells you something and it's a hard truth or something you need to hear that's not aligned with my reality, I don't have any of that emotional energy around the intention. I know I've told them where I want to be, who I want to be, how I want to show up. So if they're giving me that, I know that's being delivered with love and concern, and it's still going to land heavy, but I need to sit with that, really sit with that in a different way.
Okay, our very last question, and no, all right. Well, he's up. You're good, you're good.
Thank you. Greetings. My name is Gerard. I help companies integrate generative AI in their services. First of all, thank you so much for the wealth of information you gave today. Ebo, you really touched me with how you integrate spirituality and authenticity in your North Star. Drenell, how you seek the challenges of the market to grow. And Craig, your candor, even talking about wealth in corporate relocation was outstanding to me. Now, that being said, we've talked about the values that we incorporate in North Star. How about personal ambition? Waking up one day and say, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a CEO. How do you balance that with impact and significance?
It's a great question, and thank you for the question. I'm going to start out because this is something that I'm wrestling with right now, and not even wrestling with, but as I think about kind of what's next for me and being able to still occupy the seat that I occupy, with the employer that I'm with. I do a lot of work in community. So I'm currently the treasurer, chief finance officer of the Minnesota Black Chamber of Commerce. This has been work that is a passion of mine. How do we help Black businesses grow, scale here in the state of Minnesota and beyond? But also recognizing that I have plans on being a COO at an organization as I think about my next transition. And so with that, how am I able to take my love for what I'm doing in community? How do I align that with kind of skill building, development of myself? But again, going back and tying it all back to having a broader plan around what that looks like. How do I execute? How do I implement? And so I've been able to marry work together. Again, I'm on a board of that organization. My organization supports me doing that work. And so again, finding that unique opportunity, I think we often, we don't place a lot of high value on service leadership, volunteerism. And I think that that's another way in which you're able to get another at-bat or more at-bat opportunities. So that's just something that I personally am doing. And as I'm working and continuing to grow, how I'm pulling those all together, those pieces and parts together.
I think I look at it as intentional integration. I'm the CEO of the organization I'm the CEO of because it aligns with my personal passion for kids. So we provide mental health services to kids, and all my nonprofit jobs that I've had as an executive have been in organizations that in some way invest in the well-being of kids. It also is the alignment of where I'm meant to be in my development. So it's not necessarily that That just happens to be the role that aligns with where I am in my development in terms of where I need to grow and where I can grow and where I can have impact. That role happens to be the CEO role that has the combination of opportunities that aligns with where I am at developmentally. But at some point after that, that could be a different role. That just happens to be the role right now. So it's not necessarily about the role for the sake of the role. It's about where can I have the impact I want to have and in the world that I want to have that's aligned in the space that lets me get, you can address my financial concerns and also let me continue to grow and develop and have the impact that I want to have in the world. And it aligns with that. And I was very intentional about even the organization I joined. And when the opportunity came up of, do I want to do it here or not do it here, are these things going to line up? Because I don't want to do it just because it's a title. I want to do it because it's something that's the next stage of my evolution and growth as a professional and as a person. And it provides an opportunity for me to do that and add value to the organization and align my personal values and align my personal purpose. But I think in order to do that, there's a lot of work I've done around what I want out of life, what I want professionally, how I want to balance those things. So when those opportunities come up or when you explore them, that you can see that's not it. And you may get opportunities that are not it, but unless you've done that work around, is this going to line up? And you may find yourself in places that this wasn't it, and I didn't discern, and I should have known 3 out of 5 were not there, and I should have seen that and paid attention to that because that's not it. So I think that internal work around who do you want to be, how do you want to be, where do you want to be, what's that impact, and you can use that as a filter. And if those don't line up, you really need to discern something's off, or your board of directors telling you, hey, there are these things and this is off. Why are you still doing this? Because how are you going to reconcile that?
And that you get to try multiple things, all those things, trying until something fits. And so again, don't just give up or lose that vision of where you're going and where you want to get to.
Well, thank you. Okay, let's give a big round of applause to our panel today.